So basically, when it comes to writing your case study content, I was giving you guys this template, which is, by the way, from another designer. It's not mine, but it's working really well for me. And basically what you want to focus on is, like, first of all, giving context of like what's happening at the beginning of the case study. What is the problem? This is what I'm talking a lot about, of like clearly defining your problem statement. What is the problem which you want to solve? Because actually, we as designers, our main job is to solve a problem with design, right? So if you have the right problem which we want to solve, we are successful designers. Because, you know, if you don't know the right problem which you want to solve and you are solving the wrong problem, then your design doesn't worth that much. That's why first we have to find a good problem, and then we have to focus on that problem by how you're solving it. But that's also another topic. The point is that you want to outline your context, what is going on with this design, what is the story, how did you get there? Then you want to write a clear problem statement. What is the problem which you are about to solve? Then you might want to add like solutions and features. It's sort of like teasing. So at this point, you are not talking about like, okay, how did you come to these solutions and features, but you're just showing the solutions beforehand. It's like sort of like a teaser, sort of. And then here we're having a jump. And basically now this part, the first part, is sort of like teasing, like, look, this is what I can create, this is the problem, and this is how I would solve the problem. But the rest of the design is basically going to be a bigger part of this one, but breaking it down in smaller chunks, basically. So when we talk about research, analyzing, how might we use ideating, iterations, final design, style guide, and reflections, you know, this is the process, right? This is when you do the research, when you do the competitive analysis, when you do the user interviews, when you send out the surveys, when you are observing the customer support or whatever research methods you are using. This is that point. Then you're gathering your data, right? Then you're going to analyze this data. This is the analyzing phase. And you're going to analyze it. You're going to turn those data points into how might be statements. And then you can start thinking about the solution. Then you can iterate on the solution, and then you can deliver the final design prototype. You can test it, and then you can make the high fidelity. So what you have to see, that basically this first part until this line, is basically just a sort of like a teaser of like, here is the design, here is the problem, here is how I solve it. It's like sort of like a quick glance of the solution. But the rest of the case study is going to be basically the same thing which we had before, but now we are going to detail it a lot of like what's happening in this section. We are detailing exactly the same thing. But now we are talking about, okay, how did I find out the problem? How did I analyze my data? How did I come to the solution? And how did I make the solution into a reality? And, you know, there's just one thing, because now what I described for you was not really about the content itself, but like rather what is the design process which you have to follow and how you should organize it in a case study. That's one thing. The other thing, when it comes to writing your case study, that you wanna be logical about what you are doing. And for some of you who I'm already was talking to, this is what I miss from most of the designers' case studies, that like, you know, having the conclusions of like, that's why this structure is like quite logical, and that's why I prefer, and I always say to like try to write a logical copy, because let's say I'm a recruiter or an HR person, somebody who is hiring for a company. And what I need to see from you as a designer, I need to understand if you can make logical fact or data-based decisions. And that's why this is so important to like showcase your research in your case study. Because if you're not showcasing your research and you're not showing the analyzing part of like, okay, how did you get from the research, how did you turn those research into solutions? Like, for example, let's just say that for some reason you're writing your copy, you're talking about your research, and immediately jumping to the ideation or solution part. Or maybe even a lot of people does this way. They just talk about the research and boom, immediately design prototype. And then the recruiter or senior designer who is looking at your case study, they're going to feel a blank. They're not going to understand, like, out of your research, out of those your surveys and user personas, how did you create it immediately, like a really cool design, for example. And even if you did all of these other steps in the middle, even if you did them, if you're not talking about them, no one is going to know that you are capable of doing those things. So that's why we have to talk about our progress and talk about our processes. And this is when I'm saying, like, you have to be logical, because these are the things which I see a lot of designers are missing, of like, what is the logical continuation of your process? Like, from research, how do you get to the end result? How do you get to the prototype? How do you get to the design? Because, you know, in the first part, it's like fine, because we are just like giving a teaser for the reader of like, this is how cool design I'm making, this is the solution, this is the problem, done. It's like a quick introduction. But in the second part, we want to be really tedious of like, okay, here is what I was doing exactly. Here is how I analyzed my research. Here is how I was writing my how my piece. Here is how I was ideating on the solution. I was doing different brainstorm sessions. I was talking to the team. I was using an affinity diagram, whatever the hell you were doing. You just have to talk about it, because this way, let's say I would read a case study like this one, then, you know, it's going to make sense. I'm going to understand, like, if everything is written here, I'm going to understand how do you get from A to B to C to Z to F to whatever point. But if this part is missing, then it's not good. So this is what you guys have to keep in mind, and that's why we are using the double diamond process, and basically every designer is using double diamond process or the design thinking process. Both of them is doing exactly the same thing, just walking you through, guys, a design process, right? And that's why if you're not following the design process in your case study copy, it's a problem, because designers, you know, they normally, especially if we are talking about experienced designers, they know what's missing, right? And, you know, when I would look at a case study, I don't know anything about you guys. I don't know how well you are designing. I don't know how well you are thinking. I don't know how well you are researching. My only sample is only the case study itself, which I'm reading, right? And if from here you are missing key information, then, you know, I might going to judge or might going to think that, you know, you're not capable of doing those things. You don't know how to do those things. And this is a problem, because if I think that, maybe I'm going to think that, you know, this other designer who actually know exactly the same amount of knowledge as you do, but maybe they had this process in their case study, you know, then I might going to invite this designer for an interview instead of you, maybe, for example. Any particular questions about this topic comes to mind, or should I just keep talking? Okay, I'm really good at talking, so I can do this forever, basically. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Karthik, come on, it's up to you.
Hey, Varun, I have a small question in this, but not exactly regarding the design process, but a specific bit. So in the design, the case study, is it recommended to have the video of the prototype or the complete Figma file wherein the actual recruiter or the designer who is looking at the case study, they can have the hands-on experience? So which is preferable?
Sorry. Okay, so there is like two ways to answer it. So the challenging part about writing a case study, that there is two multiple user needs which you have to keep in mind when you're writing your case study. And for example, when I said like we have this like kind of like teaser part at the beginning, we have this sort of like teaser, like sort of like quick summary and sort of like quick information to like make it easy to understand for everyone. And also this is a good mindset about your portfolio, to like just make it as easy to understand and as easy to digest as possibly you can. Because the first gatekeeper, or the first person who is going to look at your case study is going to be the recruiter, right? And first we have to convince the recruiter, and just keep in mind that the recruiter is not a designer. So no matter how well your design process is, she won't understand it. But what she understands, how interesting your copy is, how interesting your titles are, how interesting your copy, and how good your designs are. And that's why I'm pressuring really hard the fact, even this was the first topic in the course, that you have to be really good at UI design in general, because the recruiter is going to be the first gatekeeper of your success. So you want to first go through that part of ticking in like, okay, I'm good enough for the recruiter. And actually the recruiter is going to judge you based on your designs. And this is like, whenever I say this, and I know it sounds bad, but we're going to be judged by our designs first, and then we're going to judge by our actually like UX design capabilities. And this is the point where you have to be like, the case study in optimal cases, it's going to be like multiple leveled. So basically, this would be one level of like, first of all, you have to convince the recruiter with like good UI designs and good titles and just like a good looking case study. But then you actually have to convince the senior designer or like any other designer who's going to hire you, that you are not only making good designs, but you are also making logical, fact or data-based decisions as much as it's possible from the situation, right? But that would be my answer, that you have to think on a sort of multiple layer way, because we have to meet multiple use cases when we are talking about a case study. It has to be easy to digest for anyone basically who is not a designer, but it also has to be smart enough that it's going to also convince other people, senior designers. Hey there, Maya, I'm not sure about how to pronounce it, so sorry. Hi. Yeah. All right, Zara, question, listening? Yes?
Yes, I have one question. We did a lot of work in the research field, and we had a lot of content. When I received feedback about my portfolio, it was that there was too much content. How can we present this better visually in our portfolio? Because I had a lot of research files and a lot of information.
Okay, that's a good question though. It's like basically, let me rephrase it. Basically, how do you decide like what information to include in your case study and what not, what is important and what is not important? So in general, I would say that especially if you do like a lot of research, I would think that, probably most of your case study, you can write a lot about your research and maybe equal amount or maybe even a little bit less about your actual design. Depends on the situation, right? But you definitely don't want to overload your design with a lot of research because it's not going to be a pleasant experience to look at. So it's first of all, like the amount of information. I would say that highlight, depending on, I don't know, I'm just going to guess. Let's just say you were doing 4 different kind of research and maybe they were like quite long and quite extensive. If it was the case, I wouldn't recommend including all of them, even though you did them. And maybe during the interview, if somebody going to ask you like, okay, Zara, for this project, tell me more about your research. And then you can actually tell everything about your research, because this is going to be the time when you can yap about and talk about your stuff. But here in the case study, as we said, the goal is to like make it as digestible and easy to go through as possible. So you don't want to overwhelm or overload the user, the reader, with a lot of information. Therefore, I recommend figuring out like what were the, let's say on maximum like 2 or 3 maybe most important research methods which you were using, you think is like really important. And then you can just talk about those, like, okay, like here I was doing this kind of like research methods, and then this was the result, or this was the key insights which I was gathering from it. Basically, that would be the analyzing part, right? But you have to keep, everything else has to be fit inside here. So you don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to spend, I don't know, 20% of my case study with talking about my research, and maybe only 5% talking about the rest of the design, because it would be unbalanced. So this is what we are going for, to like balance out, to keep in mind that we have like a balance of like everything which we need in our case study to make it logical. So my recommendation would be to like decide which is the most important, most relevant for you, and then And I know it sounds kind of feels weird that you did all of that work, possibly even during multiple months, and you are not even including it into your research. But we have to understand that, as I said, we want to make it digestible, we want to make it easy to consume. And if it's overwhelming with research, then it's not going to be a good look. On the other hand, there are other cases when you would apply for a researcher position, or maybe more a UX heavy position. For that scenario, I would recommend actually talking about a lot from your researches and your insights and methods and ways how you were doing that research. Because for, let's say, a research position or a UX heavy position, we would be more expected to be able to do those things, not only focusing that much on the actual UI design at the end, for example. But just if we are talking about a general UX UI design position and UX UI design role, we want to be seem like a well-rounded designer who also know how to do research, but also know how to do UI design as well. So that would be a different part. If you are really strong in the research department and you are looking for researcher jobs that are usually dedicated UX researcher positions, stuff like this, maybe that would be more suitable for you, depending on what you are looking for.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Any other question, guys, regarding the copy? Or maybe anything else could be, by the way. No? Okay. Well, guys, I'm going to say goodbyes for today. Thank you very much for being here with me. I'm going to do this every Tuesday from the same time. It's going to be 7:30. So if you want to prepare your question in advance, that would be nice, so we can jump right into the answers. And just in the meantime, if you are just keep going through with the content itself, which you can find in the Skool community, just try to do it as best as I can. And I know I'm talking a lot. I know, guys, I get this feedback a few times, so I'm trying to be better at not talking that much. But I try to make these videos as sort of being straight to the point here. And during probably the weekend, I'm going to upload the rest of the videos, which is talking about how to apply for companies, how to interview, how to solve the take-home assignments, how to negotiate, stuff like this, basically. Okay. So yeah, if nothing else, have a great night or day, depending on where you are. It's going to be evening for me. So enjoy your day and see you in the group. And if nothing else, see you next week here at the same time. Thank you very much for being here with me. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
And support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.